Daith da, Eobi Nagan. Welcome to podcast number 153. So before I start talking about me last week, I've just got to thank everybody so much for the wonderful comments, the phone calls, people popping in, messages, social media, since I put the post on our RJ Bray Facebook page last Sunday. Now, I was a little bit peeved, really, because on Saturday, one of my friends sent me a message showing me a photo of a mail drop that had happened in Wadebridge by one of the main direct cremation companies, Pure Cremation. And I was a bit upset, really, because I don't think people realise, and this is why I did the actual post, is that ourselves, and I would say most local funeral directors, offer the same thing as this company, but at a cheaper price. And also, the cremation takes place locally down here in Cornwall. You know, for example, Pure Cremation's crematorium is in Andover, which is quite a way away, really. So I just want to thank everybody. I mean, I did put the figures up, and I think if you went for one of our direct cremations and put it in a funeral plan, you're £500 cheaper than that, big company, Pure Cremation, with its cremation and funeral plan. It's a heck of a difference. And I did put on the end of the post that if anybody'd like to share it, that would be brilliant, because small family firms like us, we can't compete with the millions that's spent on advertising. And it just went viral. Crazy. I looked yesterday, day before, and over 250,000 people had seen the post. I've just looked now, actually, and 283,557 people have seen the post that I put on Sunday. So it's just letting people know, really, they can then make the choice what they want to do. I mean, the distance might not be such a big thing for somebody if you're up country sort of thing. But when you're down here, it could well do make a difference, and, of course, saving the money too. So thank you all again. Much appreciated. Going back to last Friday, we had dear Angie's funeral. Eglesale church was absolutely packed. They were standing everywhere, and 'twas a lovely service. She was a true Bridger, Angie. Very well known, very well liked, loved her darts. And 'twas brilliant. She would have loved to have seen so many people there, but 'twas very sad. The weekend itself was fairly quiet, really. I didn't have to work too much. I did work a little bit, but apart from that, the usual mixture of paperwork, walking, running and cycling. And then 'twas back to work again on Monday. You would have seen, I would have thought, all over the newspapers and that, the sad passing away of Peter Prideaux-Brune. And 'twas Peter's funeral on Monday. We had it there at Padstow Church. And the Prideaux-Brunes, well, initially I think it was the Prideauxs, going back to like the 1500s in Padstow. And then a little while later, they became Prideaux-Brune. But their history goes back all that time. You've got the lovely big house there on the top of the hill looking over Padstow. And if you haven't been there before, it's well worth a visit. It really is a fantastic house. And the church, Padstow Church is a big church. And I tell you what, 'twas full on Monday for Peter's funeral. It really was. He was such a popular chap in the town, and you'll see photos. If you go on the internet, you'll see photos of Peter and Elizabeth, his wife. The ones I love is Obios, where the horse actually goes up to Prideaux Place, which is a fantastic sight. But a very well-loved man in the town, and it was a lovely service we had on Monday. And then we was Padstow again on Tuesday, Padstow Church again, for Sheila's funeral. And another good attendance. It really was. 'Tis lovely, really, to see how funerals are coming back to what they were like before COVID, really. Some things have changed forever. We've had quite a few funerals this week, early in the morning, like these direct cremations that I'm talking about. But on the other hand, you have these services like we did for Peter and for Sheila too. There was a lovely crowd there for both of them. and it's good to see that them coming back. And likewise, also really on Wednesday, St Morgan Church again, loads of people there for June's funeral, and I'm sure she would love. There was so many family there and friends as well. It went really well. The weather was handsome. It was proper. Before I forget, actually, going back to Sheila's funeral, Reverend Ollie was there, Ollie Miles, and he said, we better have a photo and I'll put it on my Instagram. And we had a lovely photo there. We got Mabon to take it. And I did actually borrow, if I put that word in inverted commas, borrow the photo and the lovely write-up he did, which I put on our Facebook page and our I didn't put it on our website, on our Facebook page and on our Instagram page. But lovely chap, really good. Nice to see younger vicars, coming into the church. His proper job. And then Thursday, we was up in Delian for dear Ian's funeral. I've known Ian all my life. His family, I knowed him. They grew up there, West Park. Ian's a little bit younger than me, but terribly sad, passed away suddenly. And we had a lovely service. And I did put another photo there on our RJ Bray Facebook page of his tractor and trailer, and that's what his coffin arrived on. That's what he arrived on for the funeral in Delian, and I know he would have loved it. Church again was full, standing at the back, and I also did a photo of one of the floral tributes there. They had a couple there at the front, exactly the same, in milk churns, and I think he would have loved it. I really do. Very sad. This morning was a bit of a manic morning. I had to get up at 6 because I did actually have 3 funerals this morning before 9 o'clock. So my working day was not finished by 9, but I tell you what, we'd done a lot. We had a couple direct cremations, and then we had Carol's funeral at 9 o'clock. Carol and Tom, I've known them for such a long time. And that was a lovely little intimate service, but I'm going to miss her. She was a lovely lady. And then we did have Joe's funeral in the afternoon as well, but the wake was back at our place. But that's pretty much me week, really. What's happened. It's just flown by. I'm pretty late here now. 'Tis 9:20 on Friday, and I hate doing it this late in case I get a call out. But I'm nearly there now. I think also, before I forget, the one thing, I did put a couple of videos on as well. One of the lovely things this morning, we were there at Glyn Valley really early, and I put a couple of videos up of the deer. There were a couple deer in the field as you look out the window, and it was a handsome sight watching they walking around having their breakfast while we was there in the chapel. Right, well now 'tis over to part 2 with Janet. And I've had lovely responses always. Everybody, you're so kind with all your comments for all my guests. And I had some lovely comments about Janet last week. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this part too. And then I will speak to you directly with me Cornish word of me week and the Cornish dialect. So, here it is.
The year we came here, 1962, that must have been towards the end of that year when they started widening the bridge.
All right, yes.
And well, it was really, I suppose, because one of the engineers on the project bought a cottage down here because they were here for about a year.
Yeah.
And of course, he happened to go to Macmillan's, so we got to know them quite well.
Right, yeah.
And and of course, it was a very, very hard winter that winter. I don't know. Yes, there wasn't much snow, but really sharp frosts, and it really went deep into the ground. And because the water pipes are relatively shallow here, a lot of people were without water. Well, we were without water for 2 or 3 weeks up at Treadwell.
Really?
But luckily, our neighbour wasn't affected, so we were able to get hot water from there. And we had an Aga. And so eventually they rigged up a hose pipe from their outside tap to our cold water tank so that we could replenish that and keep the Aga going. So that was good. But a lot of people, there again, you see several of the young mums were their babies were due in this sort of early part of 63.
Yeah.
They actually had standpipes on West Hill.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
dear.
yes, it really was quite a severe winter.
Yeah.
Quite unusual, really.
Definitely.
But it was the frost.
Yeah.
It was the frost that did the damage. It must have started in the middle of 62.
Mm.
Yes, yes, because I've got photographs of all of that, which Peter Tuthill had them. I don't know if he used them in one of his books.
Yeah.
But yes, because Alistair did these photographs and gave us a whole set of them.
Yeah.
Of the development of it, which was obviously very interesting. And of course, the bridge itself hasn't been widened since then, but they altered it slightly with the pavements. Because at one time, yes, before they widened it, I think probably 2 cars could pass, but certainly a bus and a car couldn't pass. No. And then, of course, there was also the level crossing, because the railway was still there. So there were several hold-ups. But then again, there was nowhere near the volume of traffic back then. No. But of course, there again, the railway was interesting because I did do it once. Obviously, the Great Western, which is still in existence, goes from Paddington to Penzance. But then the other line, the Southern Railway, went from Waterloo, and it came down through Salisbury and then Exeter, and then North Cornwall.
Yeah.
And I did it once, and George was only a toddler. And when we got to Oakhampton, I thought, oh, lovely, we're nearly there. But it stopped at every station.
Oh, no.
I think it was 2 hours from Oakhampton to Weybridge.
Oh, dear.
But I was glad I did it because it was the only time. And, of course, in 1967, that all closed.
Yeah.
And there was a big petition about it because we didn't have a sixth form.
No.
And in the grammar school days, the pupils used to go by train to Bodmin.
Yeah.
But then again, the railway is gone, but what a wonderful asset the camel trail is. It really is, and it's very popular, as we know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Talking about the schools and no sixth form, I was trying to work out what is now the Comp. I think that was opened as a secondary modern school in about 1957, I think it was.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure when it became comprehensive. It was round about 74, I would think.
Yeah.
No, a little bit before then, because George started there in 74, and it was a comprehensive, and Mr. Godwin hadn't been there very long as the head. He'd only been there a year or two, I think, because prior to that it was Mr. Dobson.
That's right.
Yes, but I mean, I didn't ever know him because it was before our children went up there. Yes. But, of course, there was no sixth form there. So the pupils either had to go to Bodmin or St Austell.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure when Truro College opened. Because George and Rachel actually did their sixth form at Truro School.
Oh, yeah.
But William didn't want to do that, so he went to St Austell. And was very happy there. And then, of course, eventually we did have a sixth form at Weybridge, but it didn't last very long.
No.
And I don't quite know why.
No.
I don't know why it finished. But, of course, is it the college in Bodmin now, Callyworth?
Yeah.
That is part of Truro College, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think a lot of children go there, so it's not quite so far for them to go.
No, exactly.
I mean, it was a long day for them to go to. I mean, I think some do still go to Truro, but it does make it a long day, doesn't it, for them? Before the primary school was built on the same site as the Comp, we had the Girls and Infants School on Eglosale Road here, and the boys' school on West Hill.
That's right, yeah.
The boys went up there at 7. All my boys went there. Yeah. And I think Tom when did he go up there? I can't remember exactly, but there was going to be, they would talk about a new school for years before it actually happened. You went to the boys'
I went
school,
to boys' school.
Spale.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
Yes,
yeah.
you would have done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved
Yes.
it out there.
Yes, I think it was for the boys with the football and everything. They loved all that. I remember George was not really into football. He played because that was what they did, but he wasn't that keen. He was more interested in sport, swimming and things like that. But I remember him as a small child coming home one day chanting, "Man U, da, da, da." And I said to him, "Well, do you know what Man U stands for?" And he hadn't got a clue. There were obviously Man U supporters up there. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes. But now, of course, both of those sites have been turned into housing. And we've got it's called an academy now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And then, of course, the Bray School.
Yeah.
Yes. Which shows just how the town has expanded.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, according to the AA book, when we came here in 1962, the population was 2,500.
Was it really?
Yeah, no zebra crossings, no traffic lights. You could drive up Molesworth Street and park wherever you liked.
Yeah.
Yes, and of course, we've had the bypass.
Yeah.
Which is over 30 years now. But there was a big controversy about that, about the route that should take.
Right.
Because, Peter always maintained that obviously that bridge had to be a certain height to allow navigation.
Yes.
And he always maintained that would be a very expensive way to do it. And if they did an alternative route, they could have had a much lower bridge.
Yeah.
But anyway, this route, because he and Betty Palmer, for different reasons, they went up. And in fact, I went with them to meet the MP. And they actually went to see the Minister of Transport of the day, who was Linda Chalker.
Right, yes.
To put their point of view.
Yeah.
But we actually had a few minutes to spare, so we actually went into the Commons for Prime Minister's question time,
really?
Which was very interesting. And of course, that was Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
And but I'm sure it's the same wherever you are, isn't it? When you see people in real life, it always surprises me that they look like they do on television. Yeah. But anyway, that was a very interesting experience.
Bet it was, yeah.
Yes, it was. That was way back. Can't remember, 1983, I think it was, something like that. Oh, and the other thing, talking about bridges, was when, people tend to call it Annika's Bridge, but it was Dr. Bailey, who was one of the GPs in the town at the time, who sadly died very young as well. But he was the one who first...
He spoke about it.
Yes, he did. Yes. So that was really good. And of course, what is nice, there is a little plaque to mention that. And when they refurbished it recently, several of us did write to say, could that be made more visible?
Yeah.
Because it was blended in with the rest of the bridge, and unless you actually knew it was there,
exactly,
you didn't see it. So which was rather rewarding to think that they did acknowledge him on that.
Because it was going to be called the Bailey Bridge, wasn't it? Which was a play on the Bailey Bridge from the war.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realise they were actually going to call it that. Yes. Yeah. So that was really good, because there again, he was a very community-minded person and did a lot for the town.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, Tessa was in her school year.
Yes, of course she was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes. Yes, I believe she's still fairly local. I'm not sure.
Yeah, our friends were on Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's not in Cornwall. She's up a little bit, not too far. Yeah.
We're 3 bridges now.
Exactly.
From one.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing is, of course, in those days, we only had 2 doctors.
Yeah.
And Dr. Brown was still here then. And his surgery was one of those houses just below the boys' school. I can't remember the number.
Yeah.
But originally, I think he had lived there, but his partner, Dr. Stanford, and his family lived there when we were involved with it. And there was like a little, well, it was almost like a little shack, the waiting room. Yes, and then one of the downstairs rooms was obviously the consulting room.
Yeah.
But of course, in those days, doctors used to visit as well.
They did, didn't they?
Yes, I can remember when the children were poorly, often used to have a visit.
Yeah.
But of course, there's no comparison.
No.
And also, there's so much more available to us now, isn't there? I mean, years ago, it was much more limited.
Yeah.
How things have changed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they would do routine visits to the elderly.
Yes.
Once a month, they would go and see my nana.
Yes, the over 80s. Yes, I can remember people saying, yes. I think they've still got their ways of sort of flagging these things up, but it's not quite so personal, is it?
No,
I think that's what it is. It isn't to say that they haven't got a record of it. No. But there's no immediate contact, not to the same extent. No. But then again, we often say how things have changed in that point of view. Well, I mean, for instance, when you go and have your eyes tested, the complicated machinery they've got, and that's just at the opticians. Yeah. But you think of all the complicated machinery and the complexity of some of the surgery that is possible these days. It just wasn't there. It just wasn't possible before.
No.
Yes. Yes, and of course the other thing that was quite a notable occasion was when St. Breock Church was flooded in 1965.
Yeah.
I remember that very well because we were living at Trevanson at the time.
Yeah.
And it was raining, and I used to take the little ones out. Usually we used to walk in the lane because there were cows in one of the fields, and just to take them out for an hour. And it was pouring with rain, but it was blue at Padstow.
Right.
So I thought, we'll get ready, and then when the rain stops, we'll go. Well, of course, the rain didn't stop here.
No.
And where we lived, the road was quite a slope down past, but luckily for us, it was like a river coming down there, but luckily it didn't actually come into I think it did come into the garden, but that in itself was on a slope, so it didn't come into the house.
Were you right in the village then?
Yes, right in the village. We lived we called it Ship's Bell Cottage. I don't think it had a name before that, but it backed on to what is Trevanson House.
Oh, yes, I know.
Where the Bancrofts lived.
Yeah.
And the cottage that we lived in was the original, apparently, we were told. And we were also told that at one time there was a lady who lived there who kept lions.
All right.
But I don't know how true that was. But then the other part of the house, which you could see it was a more modern style, had been built on.
I see.
And over the years it had been changed from being one house to two. And of course it was two, so that's how we bought the back part.
Yeah.
And we had quite a bit of garden. And Sidney Jewell there was obviously quite a complex of land there when Sidney Jewell had bought it. And so there was land that went right down to a stream.
I see.
So we bought some extra land. It was a steep slope, but it was nice just to have that little bit of extra.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. But, going back to the flood, as I say, it didn't stop. But apparently, I've read since, and it was a similar phenomenon with the Boscastle.
Oh, yes.
And it's called the Brown Willie effect. There was an article about it in the paper, and apparently it's when the wind is sort of blowing in two different directions.
Right.
And it holds the clouds in one place, so they dump all their rain.
Yeah. And
then eventually it changes and it clears.
Yeah.
But apparently that was what happened at St. Breock that day.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
I've seen photographs of the church.
Yes, well, I know people went down to try and salvage stuff. And there is a plaque in the church, isn't there, to mark the level.
That's right.
It was. Well, it must have been 5 feet, I should think.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Because I'm sure a lot of their burial records were ruined and everything.
Yes, they must have been. Yes, that was a real tragedy. But I remember after it was all restored and it was rededicated, they did they had a big flower festival in celebration, and it really was magnificent.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah. Yeah. And of course they've done stuff there now, so that's not so likely to happen again.
No, exactly.
No. And of course, there again, at that time, of course, there were 2 distinct parishes in the town.
Definitely, yeah.
There was St. Bray and Wadebridge, and I can't remember exactly when it was amalgamated.
No.
Sometime in the 80s, I think, or early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, when we lived at Trevanson, we were in St. Bray parish, so we used to go to St. Bray Church. And then when we moved next door to Eglesale, it was logic to go there. Exactly. So that's what we did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know there were a few parishioners that weren't overly happy of them joining together.
No. Well, dare I say, there was quite a bit of rivalry between the two. And if there was a problem, it was always the other side that were to blame. Oh. Well, I mean, you can understand it in a way, I suppose, because that's what people had worked for and what they were familiar with.
Exactly.
But gradually, I think it's become more acceptable. And it does make sense.
Yeah.
And of course, they've done quite a bit of reordering, as they call it, at Eglesale to make it more user-friendly.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's quite an important thing, especially as Eglesale itself, with all that building, with all the building that's going on, obviously there's going to be more demand for social facilities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Janet. That was proper. And we'll have the final part of Janet's interview next week. For me, Cornish word of the week, I think because we was talking about Prideaux Place earlier down at Padstow, they've got loads of deer down there. If you go down to look at the house, you can go up the lane, you've got the lovely house there on the left, and then to the right, you've got their deer park. And it's a fantastic sight. So I thought I would do the Cornish word for deer, which is carrow. Carrow. And then my Cornish dialect of the week. Now, this is for somebody that's looking a bit miserable. If they're looking a bit fed up and miserable, you can say, "He've a face on him like a picked crab. He've got a face on him like a picked crab." So here we go. Right, well, I'm going to leave you now for this week. I managed to get it in without having any calls this evening. So I hope you have a good week. Wish you well. Do Guinness. Curno Bisfican.